Hello, this is Greg Allison, Green Gregs, coming to you on the 7th of May, 2021. Time on deck, 2600 hours, Central Daylight Time. I've talked to you many times about nuclear winter. And there's also the prospect of volcanic winter. What do they mean to you? How serious are these threats? How real are they? They are real, and I'm going to go into that. These are things that a prepper should be concerned about. So I'm going to cover these from the standpoint of what does a prepper need to know and what do you need to do. But we're going to start talking about the threat to underscore that it is real. And I bring this to you in part of my series to keep your eyes wide open and head on the swivel so you'll know to prepare. Because don't be scared, be prepared. Because we got a lot of challenges facing us. We got a lot of stuff to go through potentially. The best way to do it is to be ready for it. Because in the end, we win. I am an optimist, even though I throw all this stuff out there you need to be aware of. I know a lot of us are going to be ready, or at least we're trying our best to get ready for the things that might come at us. And the more of us that are ready, the better we're going to do. So I'll bring you topics like this. I talk about such things as gardening, because that's a skill you're going to need in these days and times with things that may come. I'll talk to you about other prepping skills, storing things, buying stores of food, and very much about things like eating wild edibles. And also, you got to know how to get by, how to survive, how to live. We talk about tribes, communities. I've even got a habitat design, which I'll be sharing more with you on the future. A home you can live out of, make a living out of, and it will be very resilient to these hard times. So subscribe to my channel, bang the notification bell, and click all to see my many videos. I talk about worms, worm farming, gardening, aquaponics, all essential skills. The worms will be very essential. And I am selling worms again, greengregs.com. And oh, by the way, I do have a very good special right now. We have $300, no, excuse me, $200, I wish, $200 off a 3-month supply of this food that lasts 25 years. And you're about to see why this is important when I go into this. 25-year lasting food that is real food. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 2,000 calories a day. Get this and you'll be a winner and help keep starvation away. And I got to tell you, my friends, that is an awesome deal. $200 off a 3-month supply. It's like $50 off for a month supply. So these are good deals. And go to prepwithgreg.com. That's where you find that at prepwithgreg.com. It's real food. And you can also click the big logo, and it'll take you into my Patriot Supplies website. And it helps me if you go through prepwithgreg.com. All kind of prepping supplies there. And you're about to see why these are important, why you need to be aware of this. So let's get into this story here. Like I say, we've talked a lot about nuclear winter. And when we've been talking about the prospects for some of these other countries to have a conflict, like Pakistan and India, we've mentioned that. There's other smaller conflicts that could occur that could cause a nuclear winter. It doesn't take the big powers getting into it, and the big powers just may get into it yet, as we know, and I'll talk about in these videos. So be ready, don't be scared, be prepared. But I'm going to share some videos here with you. I'm going to share some websites here with you, some articles, just to kind of give you perspective. And here we go. This is from Al Jazeera. Now, whatever you might think or not think, Al Jazeera does bring some interesting news, and they cover things a lot of other agencies don't cover. And of course, this is not a new story. We've talked about Project Force, Could the World Survive a Nuclear Winter? Is their article here. They got a video here, which we're not going to play. But so they're talking about the firestorms triggered by these blasts, taking plumes of smoke up into the stratosphere. Smoke, soot, ash, and it propagating around the world. And that's what it's got to take. We've had fires before, some big ones, but if it's not a big firestorm that's going to take it up in the stratosphere, it's not a threat. That's what is required for this to become a major threat to us here. As you can see, the term was coined in the 1980s. And what they knew originally, they were looking at what happens to the U.S. and the Soviet Union got into it. Now Russia, but now they're finding there's been no less than 4 analyses that say, 4 independent analyses that say even a small-scale conflict such as between India and Pakistan would cause quite a nuclear winter. Here they talk about the effects of the blast. We're not going to go into that because I think you know what a blast could do. And so, but here's what's interesting. So, talking about the soot entering the atmosphere. Would go around the planet within just months, and they said it could stay there for up to 10 years. before it really starts precipitating out, because it's above most of the weather when you're in the stratosphere. That's the problem with this stuff getting up in the stratosphere. That's why it hangs. It's above the weather. Our weather's in the troposphere, which is just below there. So in one recent simulation, global harvest plummeted about between 20 to 40% in for at least a decade. So we're not talking about a one-year drop. We're talking about a prolonged drop of 20 to 40%. 40% would be catastrophic. 20% would really put a lot of people in peril. 40%, oh my God. Now, this is what I find interesting right here. This is why it triggered me to want to share this with you again, guys. We've all heard, or many of us at least have heard about the year without a summer, which was 1816. In 1816, we didn't have a bean. So and that was caused by Mount Tambora. And Mount Tambora caused a temperature drop of 0.07 degrees centigrade. And that caused havoc. What they're talking about here, and I said, why did they pick a year? Why did they pick a year? Is this like, you know, exercise 201? Why did they pick a year? I don't know. That always unnerves me when I'm seeing pick a year. Maybe they just picked the simulation based on what they thought those guys would have. I don't know. Mount Tambora erupted in 1815. It spewed ash up in the atmosphere of the Earth. Here it said, and this is even a limited exchange would cause a temperature drop of up to 5 degrees centigrade. Now, 5 degrees centigrade is about 9 degrees Fahrenheit for us here in the United States, who may not be as understanding of what the degree centigrade is. A degree centigrade is bigger than a degree Fahrenheit. So we're talking about 9 degrees. So that's quite a drop, quite a drop. So here we're a little over a degree Fahrenheit, but here, this is quite a drop in temperature. So here they're talking about the Tambora event. We're going to go more into Tambora. We'll talk about volcanoes here. We're going to kind of cast this across, and then we're going to talk about what it means from a prepping standpoint. Okay, I'm just trying to paint the picture here to show you that this is something to really be concerned about. We know the volcanoes go off from time to time. And it doesn't take a super volcano. Tambora was not a super volcano, by the way. It was just a step below. It was a VEI 7. A super volcano is VEI 8 in terms of the size of the explosion. And that's a scale, I believe it's orders of magnitude, kind of like the Richter scale, if I'm correct on that. So Pakistan versus India scenario. See, the reason I picked that is because Pakistan and India have really been at each other. They've had a lot of fights. And we know there's a lot of the Indians accuse the Pakistanis of terrorism and vice versa. We know there's been, all kind of things going on between the two in those areas in that respect. And we know that they've been on the edge of skirmishes. They've had wars, and they've recently been on the edge of similar things. They're really at a standoff between each other. And the problem is they're right next door to each other. So it'd be easy for one side to mistake what the other side is doing. But the thing that's kept the United States and Russia from actually having a full-scale exchange is the distance between us. It takes, maybe 45 minutes for this stuff to go over the poles and hit us from there, and vice versa. So we got time to figure out if what we think is an attack is real or not. And yet we've came very close, within a hair's breadth, of full-scale nuclear war with Russia several times. But the only thing that saved us was indeed that time scale. Something that we're not going to have in the future, since we're going to hypersonic weapons. That time scale is going to diminish rapidly. So we are at risk of a full-scale nuclear war more than ever coming up. And even some of the Russian officials are now saying that the relations between the United States and Russia may be worse than the Cold War. But that's a whole other topic. We're just looking at the lower side of it here. See, the thing is that this article says Indians implement a proactive or cold start doctrine for conventional attacks on Pakistan. So basically they're saying they're keeping all their forces up on the border and all their supplies so that they can move in immediately, with the idea of being able to deliver a short shot, severe shock to the enemy before international diplomatic pressure can put a halt to the conflict. Hey, they want to cut the nation in half because they see Pakistan has been a long, thin country, easy to divide with such a thrust. The problem is that the Pakistanis might retaliate with limited tactical nuclear weapons, because they're being essentially wiped out, and that's what's going to trigger that kind of a reaction from a country. And once they start using the limited tactical nuclear weapons, the claim is that now that the whole idea of not using nukes has been broken. Once that threshold has been shattered, that it's easier, far easier for it to escalate and start targeting each other's countries' strategic assets. And between India and Pakistan, or somewhere it's thought to be believed to be 400 to 500 warheads. Bear in mind, some of these nuclear winter studies were based on 50 warheads or 100 warheads being used of the size of Little Boy, you know, the 15 kiloton, actually it's 15, 17 kiloton weapon that we dropped on Japan. It just so happens that their weapons are actually larger and they got more of them. So it could be worse than the analysis indicates. You know, the analysis was on the lower end quite often in some of those different, like I said, there's been 4 different studies. One used 15, one used 100. And so they've looked at other limited options. So, hey, they're not using a full scale, you know, exchange. What would happen? So, and as terrible as what it would do to the population directly in both countries, which would be bad, the longer term effects of the soot and the ash rising up from those cities that had been destroyed could be far, far, far worse. Darkness and starvation is what the whole world could suffer based on their passions there. So that's a problem with the nuclear war. It don't just affect those who are mad at each other. It affects the entirety of the world, other nations, innocent people, biospheres, local biomes, animals, plants worldwide could be affected by these events. So what right is it for 2 people that are locking horns to wipe everybody else out, right? So, but that's, you know, kind of what could happen. It wouldn't wipe us out necessarily, but it would really, civilization would take a hard blow hit from this. Here they claim the U.S. corn supply would drop by as much as 20%. You know, how do you get that if you're dropping a temperature of 5 degrees Celsius, 9 degrees Fahrenheit? It could be worse. It could be. But, you know, some of these projections are conservative on purpose. But see, that's based on the temperatures. The problem is the ozone layer would also be destroyed, and ozone crop damage could be far more significant. They claim in some places the ozone might be 20 to 70% loss. That would be very significant for crop damage and harm to animals and people. You know, you get skin cancer outside. You don't want to be going outside in the daytime too much. You want to maybe carry an umbrella around like the Brits do, right? They call, you know, we call them umbrellas or parasols. They call them bumper shoes, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so let's go in here and look at this. The year without a winter. Any of you heard of this? This is the map of England. I mean, excuse me, mainly in France. Look at that. France took that year pretty hard. The year without a summer, excuse me. The year without a summer. What do I call the year without a winter? The year without a summer. I'm not going to edit this, guys. Editing takes a lot of time. They talk about some events in here, but in 1815, Tambora went off. To give you guys an idea, it hit really hard up in the Northeast. New England states were hit really hard by this, and a lot of our northern states would be hit hard. So they talked about such things as, and this is a drop in 0.7 of a degree centigrade. The weather itself was not a hardship for those accustomed to long winters. The problem lay with the crops and the food, supply of food and firewood. All this firewood a problem. And so they talk about the higher elevations. But so in May of 1816, frost killed most of the crops at the higher elevations in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont, upstate New York. On 6 June, snow fell in Albany, New York, 6 June, and Dennisville, Maine. In the Cape May, Cape May, New Jersey, frost was reported 5 nights a row late in June. Extensive crop damage. See, guys, fruits and vegetable crops survived somewhat, but you know, corn had a lot of problems. That's what they're saying here. But you know, all your crops are going to suffer with that kind of weather. I mean, just think what that would do to your garden, folks. And I even heard that in Alabama they had frost in July. So that's not mentioning that in here. But this is what got a lot of the people to move out of New England and start settling in the Midwest. They started moving out of New England as a result of this. So, Church of Shakers in New Lebanon, New York. Nicholas Bennett wrote, in May of 1816, all was froze. The hills were barren like winter. Temperatures were below freezing almost every day in May. The ground froze on June the 9th and on June the 12th. Wow. On July 7th, it was so cold, everything had stopped growing. Wow. July the 7th. Wow. And the Massachusetts historian summed up the disaster. Severe frost occurred every month. Every month. June 7th, 8th, snow fell. It was so cold that crops were cut down, even freezing the roots. Wow. In early autumn, when the corn was in its milk, that's when it started, the silk is still, coming out. It was thoroughly frozen, that it never ripened and was scarcely worth harvesting. Breadstuffs were scarce and prices high, and the poorer classes were often in the straits for want of food. Yeah, I heard there was starvation that year, especially in the Northeast. But it hit a lot of places. And talking about Thomas Jefferson retired from his presidency from farming on Monticello, sustained crop failures that sent him further into debt. And we're talking about Virginia, guys. We're talking about Virginia. Newspaper in Virginia reported corn crops would be 1/2 to 2/3 short. 1/2 to 2/3. 1/2 to 2/3 in Virginia. And yet the projections were 20%. This is based on 0.7 degrees centigrade. Yet they projected with at least 20% of the crops in America for something that drops temperatures 5 degrees centigrade. Really? 7/10 versus 5 degrees. Here you're losing 1/3 to 1/2, and here you're 20%. You see what I'm saying? You wonder about these projections. Of course, maybe the nuclear winter effects won't be as bad as they project. But even if they're not as bad, if they're just a fraction as bad, if they're like Tambora, that would be pretty bad. Pretty bad. You see what I'm saying? So it just goes on and on in here talking about these things and other eruptions and so forth, and how people, paintings done in the era, tended to be redder skies. Well, that's what they were saying. Redder skies. So this is an article on the and off of Wikipedia about nuclear winter, and they've talked in here about the scale of just here scenario assuming 100 or more city firestorms. That's 100 explosions in this study. With so there's quite a bit. Like I said, there's 4 independent studies of this. I'm not going to read this, but and they also talk about some people disputing it. Climatic effects, ozone, nuclear summer, which is cold. So they talk about the various studies in here. Some from the 80s. So they're talking about the full scale stuff and on more limited range. I'm not going to read all of this article. But look, guys, this is Mount Tambora. This is a VEI 7 explosion compared to Krakatoa. Everybody's heard, about Krakatoa, which blew the island up. Now Anat Krakatoa, the son of Anat Krakatoa, is rising out of the waters there, and it's pretty active. When this blew, you could hear it around the world, and this was done in an age of telegraphs. So this is why it was reported so well. This was quite a bit earlier, but these kind of explosions are possible, guys. This is in the realm of possibility. Mount Venusus, and of course, we all talk about Mount St. Helens, which if this was 19, this is 1/4 of 1, whatever that is. So there's some units in here. I'm not sure what cubic miles of ejecta. 19 cubic miles of ejecta versus 1/4 of a cubic mile of ejecta. There you go. So there you are with that. So let's see. Let's get back. Let's go to this tab here. This is how. So it's not just Pakistan and India. I just did a video talking about the prospects of Israel and Iran getting into it. How many warheads does Israel have? Well, between 80 and 400 is what is projected. Nobody knows. I've heard 200, but maybe up to 400. That's on par, even if Iran only develops 2 or has 2 currently, as some people think. If it would only take a couple to take out Israel, only a couple. You only need 2 to take out Israel. So Israel just might respond with everything they got to anybody that hits them. So you might see the same kind of scenario just between Israel and Iran. possibly. I'm saying it will happen. I'm just saying it's possible. But if you look at Israel, so this is why Israel is so adamant against having adversary develop a nuclear weapon, is because they really only have two population centers of the Jewish people that are substantial in Israel. A lot of Israel's desert. They got a couple, a few little pockets out here and here, but these little pockets are not going to sustain the people. They're right here around Tel Aviv for the most part, and Haifa and Tel Aviv. Actually, Tel Aviv, if it were hit alone, it might take down the nation. It would be very susceptible to other things taking them out. So the nation of Israel as a Jewish nation could be obliterated with just two such devices. Not a good thing for Israel. So, and Korea, how about Korea? See, we talked about 15 kilotons, right? 15 to 17 kilotons. Look here. They got weapons that are up to 50 kilotons. I think actually they fired a 300 kiloton weapon on the side of that mountain that collapsed. So they are believed to have 30 to 40 weapons. 30 to 40. 50 was the range. 50 Hiroshima scale weapons was the range of one study, right? So this is definitely in league with that. If should they decide to fling these somewhere, of course that would be. I don't know how. What would don't try to think for a dictator, especially when they're living in a cult of personality. Their worldview is highly skewed. Don't think they're going to think rational like us. So it's hard to think for them. Supervolcanoes. Look. So a supervolcano is a volcano that erupts at the VE scale of 8, my friends, the VE scale of 8. And so there's maps of basalt flood areas. This is a name of many of these supervolcanoes. And Tambor is not one of those, but it's a VE7. This map carries VE7 and VE8 volcanoes. The VE8 supervolcanoes are red. Looky here, guys. Was that New Brunswick? Yeah. So I don't know about this one. This one is the Long Valley caldera. I think that is termed a supervolcano. Why is that not red? But down here in South America, around a lot of preppers are going to Argentina, but this place is peppered right here with them. Yikes. Yeah, guys, you might want to think about that if you're heading down to Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina, maybe even Brazil. You could all be subject to these guys. I think some of these are based almost extinct, but we know two of them up here. Well, one of these is actually, there's really only one up here. I believe this is Yellowstone, of course. But there was a trail left by these as our continental plate moved up west. So, and we know this region is very active. We know it's active around here. And this is the one that a lot of people are worried about on the border of North Korea and China. And some people thought the test that North Koreans would do might set this one. China was concerned. China was concerned that North Korea might set this one off with the testing they were doing. New Zealand has got a red one, my friends. And now we're finding there's some out in the ocean. Yeah. And if one in the ocean went off, what would that do to us? Yeah, that could be not a pretty picture, guys. Not a pretty picture. And we can see Italy. We can see this is the one that a lot of people think the effects described in the Bible. It went off at the time of Moses, about 1500 BC. There's a beautiful island there with beautiful homes now on the rim of this old volcano. What's it called? It's shoot, I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, so I've got some friends who've been there. I can't, Santorini, how do you say that? Anyway, I'm sure somebody will tell me. So just in a nutshell, that's what we're looking at. All right, in terms of threat, it's real. It could come from volcanoes. It could come from war, from many different places. Here, or it could occur. If you get a full-scale exchange from the United States and Russia, or the United States and China, Russia and China, whatever, you get a full-scale exchange, then you got a nuclear winter that's far beyond the scale of those studies. So let me stop this share. Hello. So what are we talking about here? China, is getting very aggressive in the world today. We all know that. It's putting a lot of attention in the world. And they may have more than lot of people think they've got a lot more than, we've been saying for decades they got 300, yet they're building missiles, to beat the bang. So I got, my friend Dr. Peter Vincent Price and many others challenge that number and believe they've got a lot more than that. Russia, we definitely know Russia has a lot more. And United States and Russia conflict, United States and China conflict. Let's hope and pray that it never goes to full scale exchange. Well, we came really close. Now there's more players in the world, and we're getting hypersonic weapons. Hypersonic weapons, because they're so fast, they remove that margin of time to tell what's going on. That's vanishing. That's scary. That's one thing that's kept us safe. That's the one thing that saved us. That's the only thing that saved us on several of those occasions we had close calls. So there you are. The prospects of a nuclear winter are real. So the biggest things I worry about the effects of one of these wars is the first thing they want to do is take down your power grid if you get to a war of that scale using EMP weapons. These devices themselves cause you EMPs that within whatever area is within line of sight of that fireball, you run a risk of an EMP. But it doesn't travel around the entire world because thankfully the world is curved. Yes, people will know that who put up radio antennas. How far that radio station reaches is a function of how high that tower is. That's why we use satellites, because they reach farther. From balloons, you can see the balloons I put at 100,000 feet, 20 miles up, and it basically can cover about 400 miles on the ground. So higher you go, the more coverage you get. Fortunately, AM skips. AM gets a skip. Some signals do off the ionosphere. So that's what you're looking at, my friends. We're looking at the prospects of a volcano or a limited or big full-scale war could cause quite a disturbance in our weather. Tambora had 1 year. They're talking about a limited scale war causing effects for maybe 10 years. So imagine something that's worse in magnitude than Tambora and lasting 10 years. Yeah, that would be pretty bad. That would be devastating. So, people are challenging, some people say, well, that won't happen because blah, blah, blah. You always get that. You always have arguments. 2 PhDs, both great experts, and neither one will agree with a single word the other says. But the fact we had 4 independent studies come out this way means we need to pay attention. We need to be ready. We need to be prepared. That's why I really encourage you to learn to garden. But you may have trouble with gardening in this time. So what do? There's several things you can do. One, you can build your garden into a microclimate area by using earth around it, rock, walls. In France, the way they survived in the Monder minimum was the gardens were actually in little walled sections. They had yards and places and gardens that they built walls around. The walls created thermal mass and broke up the wind. And it's not efficient for large scale gardening, but it got them through that period. That was a smart thing to do. And that was before the day they had plastics and, could afford a lot of glass to put over to build greenhouses. And it worked pretty well. You could even have if you got a pond to the south of your position where you want to garden, it can be like a reflecting pool to reflect some of the light back into your rock wall and have the garden right there at the base of it. That's another thing you could do. So these are good little prepping moves. Even around your house, that the climate's not quite as bad as it is away from the house. If you put a garden, cut out a hole in some trees, those trees are somewhat temperature protective of the clearing in the middle. My garden, where I'm in the back of my place, that's amongst the trees, doesn't frost the same as it does in the areas around. So I've got a microclimate right there, and that helps me. It also breaks up the wind. So there's a lot of advantages to gardening in those fashions. Now, also, I would highly encourage developing means for growing indoors, for having greenhouses, and other things to augment and give you seasonal extension for your garden. My good Elliot Coleman wrote this book called 4 Seasons Harvest. He grows year-round in unheated greenhouses in Maine. Check him out, Elliot Coleman, 4 Season Harvest. He does it in Maine. So if he can do it in Maine, you ought to be able to do it just about anywhere. Now, he will be more challenged in these kind of conditions, but I bet you that a man like him will have something to eat. He don't believe in putting food up. In this kind of case, you probably will have to store food. I do encourage, once you're gardening, to start storing food. Garden more than what you eat for a year. Garden enough that you can store food. So you need to buy seeds. By the way, True Leaf Market, check my links below. Best place to get heirloom seeds, True Leaf Market. And they tell you how to grow it. So check my links on True Leaf Market. But here's the thing. You may be really challenged to grow. That's one reason you can keep seed in reserve. Always keep seed. But some years you just, you may have a hard time growing in this kind of condition. It may be up to 10 years. This is why you need to look at long-term food storage. This is why stuff like this makes a lot of sense. Even if you don't have those kind of temperature challenges, you still have off years. You get hailstorms. Oh, we've been getting a lot of hailstorms lately. It may decimate your garden. You may get, and that could happen even, in the summertime. You could have all kind of storms, other events. There may be a plague of grasshoppers for all we know. You might get raided by people that want to take out stuff. So it's good to have food. It's good to have it in storage. Maybe hide some out. The best thing is that you grow your own and start canning and preserving and build your store up where you got 10-year supply. That would be a smart move. But hey, this stuff lasts 25 years. So stuff like this is good too. But yeah, get your dried beans, get your dried rice, get your flowers and things and put them up and store them properly. And that will help you too. The big box stores, I did a video from the big box store. I think maybe a couple of big box store videos I did. So I encourage that kind of stuff too. But all these things help. But hey, right now, while they got the special on with My Patient Supply, it's a good time to go there. Go to prepwithgreg.com. Yeah, it's not through My Patient Supply, it's through affiliates like me. Go to prepwithgreg.com. It helps me and it can help you too. The $200 off for a 3-month supply is a pretty good deal. Okay, all that said, just get ready, be ready, because these things can happen. We don't know what, we came so close to it with Russia so many times, it's not funny. We could have a full-scale conflict like that, and that would be a deep, hard, bitter nuclear winter. Whether or not you would get it in the smaller scales, that would definitely give it to you. Smaller scale conflicts, and like I said, there's 4 independent studies now claiming that that would happen. We do know that the volcano, Tambora, caused a lot of havoc with just a 0.7 degree C drop. 5 degree C drop, that doesn't sound good. But if you prepare, you can deal with it. It may not be easy. Nobody said it'd be easy, but it's better to be prepared than not. Be like the squirrel, not the grasshopper. Grasshopper don't save food, the squirrel does. So put your nuts away, squirrel. Okay, that can be taken many ways, right? I do believe that we can get through these times, but we need our communities. We need people working together. So if you're interested in communities, survival tribes, resilient communities that we're starting to put together. We've got one in Arkansas. We may have one in Maine. We've got one in maybe a couple in Arizona. Florida's a prospect. So we're already starting to form groups. So email me at email info@freedomrestorationfoundation.org and put tribe in the header. If you're interested in joining up and help us with Freedom Restoration Foundation, put freedom in the header, or free. So I've got too many irons in the fire probably, but we're trying to do what we can to get us through these times ahead. And oh, by the way, I just got my trauma fixed right. I believe it's starting to run right. I hope got it coming together. So I am selling worms again. Go to greengregs.com. And also the cool thing about greengregs.com is you can go there on that website, and I'm coalescing some select areas of videos from this channel. I'm doing a video. I got a whole page. It's nothing but gardening, but it's gardening, microgreens, and aquaponics. Now I've got several videos in there, so that makes them easier to find them browsing through my channel. I don't have them all on there yet, but I've got quite a bit populated there, and I will add more to it. The same way for wild edibles. I got a whole page on wild edibles, and I got to add some more to it too. But the worm videos, I got almost every worm video on the vermiculture worm page. Check that out. So I'm trying to put together a really good resource center for you guys. So if nothing else, just go there to check that stuff out. Anyway, with all that, I'm going to say, I wish you all the best. But just remember, there's things that we can do to make it better. The microclimates, greenhouses, growing indoors, microgreens are something you can grow indoors. Save seed, extra seed, garden bigger than what you need just to feed yourself so you can put some up, store food, and buy the long-term storage food as much as you can. And just be ready. You also got to be able, defend yourselves, your family, your friends, and be careful in choosing who you let in. That's probably the best advice you can have. Vet the people. All right, my friends, that's all I'm going to say. I wish you all the very best, and I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. Y'all take care and have a wondrous weekend. Bye.